Break it down. Give me 5 people you're ready to fight right now.
Timothy Bradley, Paul, Floyd Mayweather, Devin Alexander, and whoever the fans want to see.
Listen, I told you give them something visual, so you went ahead and made your own YouTube-based TV show. It's an array of IPAs and fighters on the road. Got a question? Put them in your comment section right below. Barbershop talk while you're sitting in your living room. Pacquiao, Mayweather, and we can't forget the bruise. Coming to you live with the scoops like a ladle. Allow me to introduce the boxing round table.
Rollo Jenkins, boxologist, Zone 6.
I had to do it. I had to make one, of course. I'm sure everybody who fuck with me in the YTBC, I'm sure y'all were waiting to hear what I had to say about One Time, Keith Thurman. So here's my take. Let me start out first of all talking about this card, the whole PBC hookup. You know what I mean? I'm gonna start out with first of all, I have to say that from the jump, I was impressed. The setup, the production, and everything was pretty smooth, pretty good. Pretty much what I expected. Not anything out of the ordinary. I didn't get anything so extraordinary or impressive. It was just pretty much a solid production. The ring entrance was a little cheesy to me. It reminded me more of WWE than it did of boxing. That looked really cheesy to me. But outside of that, everything else was pretty solid. You know what I'm saying? Really, really solid. Marv Albert, Sugar Ray Leonard probably will get better as things go along, as better fights happen, yada, yada, yada. Now, this extra shit that was supposed to happen, the Hans Zimmerman orchestra music, I don't remember that. So, all I'm saying is, the shit was no different than HBO. It was a big deal for us boxing fans, us hardcore boxing fans. That shit was a big ass deal. But for everybody else, for all the other people in the world, all of the non-boxing nerds of Earth, they didn't give a shit. But it's cool that you could go to a bar and ask them to flip it on or whatever the case may be. But see, this is the big problem. And that's what I was trying to tell people the last few videos of mine. We're rolling into March Madness. Conference tournaments start this week. Selection Sunday is next week. And the TV screens will be filled with college basketball. Everywhere you go. Your local bar and grill and pub and, all of that shit. So, timing may be a little bit off. I'm not sure. You know what I'm saying? But, so back to the card. First fight we got Adrian Broner, John Molina. Obviously, John Molina came out with a Canelo Alvarez versus Alfredo Angulo type performance and laid a complete egg in that bitch. A complete egg. That fight was supposed to be the scrappy fight that he and Lucas Matisse had. But it did not turn out that way. Adrian Broner did what he was supposed to do, pretty much. I'm sure that he would have liked to have gotten John Molina out of there. And it would have been better for the TV audience if he could have gotten John Molina out of there. It probably would have been better for John Molina's career also if he'd have just laid the fuck down. Either way, that didn't happen. So, midway throughout the fight, probably about the second round, I'm sitting there watching the fight. My girl comes out with my plate of food before I get ready to go to work. You know what I'm saying? I'm eating and she's watching it with me, and she knows who Broner is, and, you know. And when we got right around that 7th round, you know, we were talking about it, and she was like, yeah, this shit is pretty boring. That fight with Madonna was much better. I'm like, yeah, okay. But this one here is pretty boring. I'm like, I'd agree with you. I will not disagree with you on that one. You're absolutely right. And when that fight concluded, the boos from all of the people that you can clearly hear was an indication on whether this shit may or may not work. And, you know, John Molina was the perfect, at least based on his past, was the perfect guy for Adrian Broner to get in there and please the crowd with. Somehow, some way, that not only didn't happen, but he did the exact opposite, the antithesis of it. So, rolling back to my point that I've made in previous videos, just putting boxing on TV won't make it popular. You know what I'm saying? Like, you have to have something new, something different. One of the things that needs to be, listen, baseball been around about as long as boxing. Baseball this year is looking at changing rules to make it more appealing to more people. Boxing needs the same thing. I keep saying that. But rolling on to the next fight. My man, of course, everybody, what y'all turned this video on for is my assessment of Keith One Time Thurman. I thought he had a good performance, pretty good performance. I wouldn't call it great. I definitely wouldn't say that this was his best performance, like I've heard in some people's videos. You know what I'm saying? That's their opinion. Keith Thurman fought a really good fight to me. Not perfect and not great. A really good performance to me. The one thing that I did like about this performance is he dealt with that adversity in the fight, and he dealt with it pretty good. I mean, it wasn't the most adverse situation to be dealing with, but there was some level of adversity in that fight. As I've stated in previous videos as well, I don't think that Robert Guerrero is any good. I don't know how anybody thought that Robert Guerrero is any good, and I don't ever think that Robert Guerrero will ever be any good. Robert Guerrero needs to fight a guy like Marcos Maidana. Those two might have a great fight. That might be a great fight. Robert Guerrero and Luis Collazo, good fight to have. Get those two together. Josecito Lopez, Robert Guerrero. That might have been the action-packed fight that you needed. Not that Guerrero and Thurman was void of action, but Robert Guerrero's skill level is not anything near Keith Thurman's. Not even close. A lot of guys are going to beat Robert Guerrero. The only reason that a lot of guys haven't beat Robert Guerrero at 147 is because he hasn't fought a lot of guys at 147. So now he's in position to start fighting some of these guys at 47, and we're going to start seeing these L's roll down his record. So Keith Thurman, what I seen in the ring, he looked really good. The part where he got to circling around the ring and running and shit, obviously that's not something that I like or I condone. But the fact of the matter is, he wasn't doing so much running that he didn't bust that guy face up. That guy looked like he was in a fight when that fight was over. Actually, the both of them did. But Robert Guerrero was a defeated fighter. He looked like a defeated fighter. When that fight was over, there was no question in anyone's mind who was the better fighter between those two guys. There was no question that those two guys were actually in a fight, and the better fighter won this night. Keith Thurman showed me that he has resilience. He definitely has good hand speed. He got popped a couple of times. I didn't see him get hurt or anything. You know, I mean, he showed me everything I needed to see. I would have liked for him to get Robert Guerrero out of there, but, you know, Robert Guerrero's a tough son of a gun, and he almost did. He almost got him out of there. So that was better than any other fighter that I've seen Robert Guerrero fight do to him. So that there in itself is an accomplishment. What would I like to see next for Keith Thurman? Of course, you know what I like to see next. It's probably not going to happen, though. But a more realistic fight and a more realistic chance, and a fight that I even want to see more, is Kell Brook and Keith Thurman. That is the fight that I want to see. That is my welterweight champion of the world fight. Whoever wins that fight is the best welterweight in the world in my eyes. You know, I know everybody want to talk about the shit on May 2nd, and that's cool. You know what I'm saying? It's finally going to happen. Funny thing, though. Earlier this week, I'm at work, you know what I'm saying? I watch fights when I get some downtime on YouTube and shit, of course. And I was watching Ray Leonard, Thomas Hearns 2. Their second fight. And it hadn't dawned on me, but it was 8 years between the first and the second fight. 8 years. 8 years between their first and second fight. And what's so funny about it was the oldest motherfucker in the fight was still younger than the youngest motherfucker in the fight on May 2nd. Ain't that about a bitch? How funny is that? So, I mean, we got a 38 and 35-year-old fighting, you know what I'm saying? And people excited about it. It's cool that it's happening. It's a big event. But right now, two guys around the same age in their physical prime. Everybody who is my age or better knows that 25-year-old, you know, from like 21 to about 26, 27, that's your shit. You could, man, listen. There was times where I stayed up all night with my folks, drinking beer, shooting shots, all night long. And everybody else went to sleep. I went to go jog in the rain because I just had that. I just had it like that. I couldn't think about. Listen, I can't even drink and then think about running right now, and I'm only 35. So, I mean, that fight there, I believe, will be explosive. Because I think that both of those guys are hungry. And both of those guys have a throwback mentality. I think that both of those guys would like to either prove themselves right or wrong in referring to themselves as the best welterweight in the world right now. I think that both of those guys would absolutely crush either one of those guys who fighting on May 2nd. So that's just how I feel. I'm sure that it's plenty of people who would disagree with me, would bring up resumes and history and fucking longevity and pound for pound list, all of those things. That shit don't matter to me. Right now, the fight that I want to see more than any other fight is Kell Brook, Keith Thurman. You know, Sean Porter got a couple of fish to fry. I wouldn't mind seeing Sean Porter fight Keith Thurman, but I would rather see Kell Brook and Keith Thurman right now. Right the fuck now. Make that shit happen in June, July. You know what I'm saying? Since we got Queen Khan scared to fight Kell Brook for some odd reason. You know what I'm saying? So, and also, it's going to be interesting to see. Everybody is talking about. See, the PBC was good for us boxing fans. It was an event for us to talk about. It was some shit. To everybody else, it was just boxing on. We the ones made this big, this extravagant thing about it being on prime time network TV. Boxing always came on at prime time. It just hasn't been on network TV for a while because it's a novice type of a sport. Just the sheer. I mean, when you break boxing down, check this out. All right, let me give you an example of why it is a novice sport and will always be a novice sport. If I wanted to become a professional tennis player, I could register and become a professional tennis player. I could go and play some tournaments, and if I win those tournaments, eventually I'd get ranked by the World Tennis Association or the Tennis Professionals Association. I think it's the TPA. Once I become ranked, then I play for the right to enter in to Grand Slam tournaments. So I believe most of the Grand Slams either start with 64 or 32 individuals. Once I make it into the tournament, the only person that can stop me from winning the Wimbledon, the US Open, the Australian Open, or the French Open is my competitors. That's it. That's the only thing. And I'm only using tennis because it's an individual sport. Golf is pretty much the same way. You play, and you playing to qualifying tournaments to get in. And if you get in, nobody can tell you no, or you can't get this, or you can't get that. I could go win the Masters right now if I was good enough to do it. So, in boxing, the reason that it'll always kind of be this niche sport is for this reason here. If you take the Adrian Broner-John Molina fight and you apply that to a team sport, which will also be associated with a particular city, let's just say Cincinnati. The Cincinnati Reds and John Molina was the Los Angeles Dodgers. Obviously, if I'm from the city of Cincinnati or the city of Los Angeles, I'm pulling for one team or the other, or in this case, one guy or the other. And my vested and emotional interest would be in the guy that fights from the city that I'm from, right? So, the difference between boxing and most other sports is this. Let's say I don't live in one of those cities. I live in Detroit. But Cincinnati happens to be in my conference or my division. Then I also have a vested interest in pulling for the Los Angeles team or John Molina based on the fact that if he beats Adrian Broner, that helps my Detroit team in their standing in their conference. So that's another reason for me to pull for one guy or the other, or to have an emotional invested interest in this particular fight where I don't have a horse in the race. In boxing, that doesn't happen. Even though the guy that I thought would win, he's probably not going to fight the guy that he probably should fight next. He's definitely not going to fight the guy that I think that he should fight next, or I would hope that he would fight next. And the guy that he probably should have been fighting tonight is probably a guy he may never fight. And that's the problem with boxing. That's why it'll always be this small group of us who just love this shit. Because there's only so much of it to love. It's not a lot to like about boxing. So us select group, few nerdy motherfuckers who find this joy in debating, talking about trying to understand belts and weight classes, identifying promotional wars, and network beefs, all of that shit. We somehow have figured out a way to make that shit interesting to us. Nobody else has time for that shit. Most people don't give a fuck about Dominic and Sue's contract with the Lions, or whether Tom Brady is going to re-sign with the Patriots, or Coach Belichick is going to retire or not, or Justin Verlander will get traded by the Tigers, or the fucking NHL is on NBC. Most people don't give a fuck about that. They'll say, hey, son, I got 2 tickets to the hockey game. Let's go down and have a good time. It's not who's playing. Because if I got 2 tickets to the hockey game, I know it's the Red Wings. I know which team I need to pull for. You know what I'm saying? And if my team is up 5-0, it's cool for me. But it's shitty for the other team. But if I'm watching the Columbus Blue Jackets and the Florida Lightning, and it's 5-0, I have no interest in that game. Neither team is in my team's conference, division, none of that. So I have no reason to watch that shit. But the slim slither of hope is that one of these teams might end up playing my Detroit Red Wings somewhere down the line. In boxing, you don't even have that. Keith Thurman and Adrian Broner could potentially fight, but it's a damn good chance that they won't be fighting next. Now, next week, whenever it is, Danny Garcia and Lamont Peterson, they end up scrapping or fighting with each other. 9 times out of 10, neither one of those guys are going to fight who the fuck they're supposed to fight next. You know, Danny Garcia knows that he needs to move his punk ass up and start fighting that welterweight. But he don't want to fuck with it. And that's cool. You know what I'm saying? I get it. Is he going to fight Broner after that? I mean, and then when he fights Broner, then what's left for him? I mean, there's so many things fighting for our attention right now. And more fights than not end up looking like John Mulaney and Adrian Broner. And that shit is going to fail miserably. Because that's the nature of boxing. I could watch it. But believe you me, my homeboys at work, if I'm not turning it on boxing, them motherfuckers is not finna watch no shit like that. They just not. It don't work like that. Nobody at work even knew boxing was on. And they all watch sports. They talk about baseball and football and hockey all the time. I mean, outside of the fact that I work for the owner of the fucking Red Wings and Tigers, they just love fucking baseball. And obviously football is king. But nobody came in talking about, hey, you see the fights last night? Nah. Nobody had a TV on boxing when I got to work. Nobody was talking about it. But we'll see how it goes in these next coming months. We got the biggest fight in, the last, since Tyson Holyfield probably. The most anticipated fight, like I said, probably since Tyson Holyfield. That's the last time I remember a fight that people outside of us hardcore boxing fans talked about. So we'll see what goes on when that fight gets ready or gets closer to happening. But I'll hold my Al Heyman bashing for now, because I do believe that he's genuinely trying to do right by boxing right now. I do believe that he's genuinely trying right now. I also believe that he is the main reason why a lot of fights didn't happen. For this reason here. For him to get into this situation, I'm sure that it took a lot of work, a lot of persuasion, probably some begging and paying off some hookers to suck some dick and stuff too. To get the money and the funds, the hedge fund together to kickstart this event. And obviously, it all being grouped around the announcement of Pacquiao Mayweather. It's a good way to start. Good, everything rolled out probably the way that they wanted it. Outside of the fact that the Broner and Molina fight didn't quite turn out the way that they thought it would. I think that they did the best they could for boxing. It was the best that they could do, and it's the best there could be. You know what I'm saying? Like, outside of having a Marquez Vasquez 3 type of fight, I mean, what more could you have asked for Makar? It's gonna be interesting, man, when they they kick off the Spike TV thing and the ESPN thing. They got some on CBS, some new other network, Bounce or something. I get it. They're trying to flood the market, push it to us like a Drake song. You know what I'm saying? But the only problem is, you know a Drake song. You can recite a Drake song. You can hear a Drake song in your head when you sleep. And then when you hear that same Drake song again, you know it. You familiarize yourself with Drake. So then the next time you hear Drake, you know that that's Drake. With boxing, you're always getting different fighters. You're getting different styles. Some you like, some you don't. Some you remember, some you won't. I'm not sure if it'll work that way. But I see what he's trying to do. And I can't be mad at him for trying it. But the one thing I will say is this. You cannot defeat your competition by leaving your competition alone. Because fighters got paid good on HBO. Some of the richest fighters in the history of boxing have made all of their riches on HBO. HBO will have unlimited amount of space pretty much to put fights on, so they won't have a lack of programming. So when you got guys like Terrence Crawford, Triple G, Mike Perez, Brian Jennings, Andre Boo Boo, guys like this. When HBO keep putting these guys on and keep putting them on, there is no way that we're not going to want to see those guys fight the other guys. Now, will Heyman have enough money to convince and sway these guys off of HBO and off of Showtime, stuff like that? Possibly. But the one thing I do know is that even if they take that guy, HBO will always be able to replace that guy. Always. They'll always be able to replace that guy. If they take Triple G right now, they'll replace Triple G by next year. If they take Terrence Crawford right now, if they take Lomachenko right now, they will get replaced next year. Easily. But the bad part about it is, you really only help HBO because a guy like Triple G right now can demand millions. He can command millions from the network. But if you take Triple G off and you start fresh and new with a new guy, And you get to save a whole lot of money, because then you get to build him up the same way you built up Triple G, the same way you built up Terrence Crawford, the same way in fucking 3 or 4 fights you built up Lomachenko, Zhao Shimin. It'll be a never-ending cycle. I don't know if he just plans on, maybe he just hopes that he'll, I don't know. You know what I'm saying? But it'll be interesting to see. I know I'm rambling on. It's your boy, Rollo Jenkins. Holla at your boy.